right, in Virginia, the once deep red state, Sean, is spinning the color wheel by turning purple and now blue. President Trump was unable to take the state in 2016 when he lost to Hillary Clinton by 6 points. And now some polls are showing that Joe Biden may be gaining some ground in the Commonwealth. Joining us now to discuss is Virginia Congressman and member of the House Armed Services Committee, Congressman Rob Wittman. Congressman, welcome to the show.
Lindsay and Sean, great to be with you.
Hey, so Congressman, I actually thought the 6 points in 2016 was closer than I thought it would be. The polls showed it to be much wider. The president did very well, seemed to hold ground in Northern Virginia. Now the polls are suggesting a double-digit lead. The last one that we just saw, as we said, shows a lead of over 12 for Joe Biden. What does Virginia have to do to turn the state around, and do you think it's gettable for the president this cycle?
Well, I do. And as I talk to folks across the 1st Congressional District, they're focusing on kitchen table issues, things like bringing broadband back to those areas, helping businesses and families recover from the impact of COVID-19, transportation. And they look at those things in relation to what they're hearing from the other side, the far left radical ideas of the other side. In fact, you just take, for example, my opponent in the 1st Congressional District, the things that he stands for. He's tying himself to Bernie Sanders, to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, and the squad. He actually wants to be part of that. He stands for things like the Green New Deal, where it's going to limit air travel. It's going to limit eating meat. 93 trillion additional dollars, massive tax increases on the middle class. Again, he's all in favor, too, of Bernie Sanders' Medicare for all, government takeover of health care, massive increases in taxes on the working class. It's just unimaginable.
Congressman, here's the thing. I get what I find so fascinating based on the contrast that you just explained. I get how some of these young, disillusioned kids might think that some of that stuff sounds really good, but your district stretches way down through Northern Virginia all the way down. How do older voters even look at that contrast and say, I mean, to me, that doesn't seem that there's a logical choice. You versus a guy that's preaching socialism.
Well, there is a distinct difference. And Sean, today, I think more so than ever, there is a stark contrast between myself and my opponent, especially when he says that the president's border wall is a racist response to a problem that doesn't exist, and when he's calling for the complete banning of firearms, when he says that firearm ownership should be destroyed. It's those kinds of things, as you said, that just don't resonate with people, and those are the farthest of the left ideologies that he continues to put out there. Wants all student debt to be forgiven. And listen, even young folks look at that and say, well, I understand how financially difficult that would be. So even the things that you may think would appeal to younger voters just don't make any sense to them. So those things don't align with voters in the 1st Congressional District. And that's why I think we have a great opportunity. And remember, many of the things that my opponent stands for are the same things that Joe Biden is standing for as he stands shoulder to shoulder with Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, Congressman, I got to ask you about this Atlantic piece. You're a member of the Armed Services Committee. It really questioned Trump's belief in the military. Obviously, we have a lot of people come out and say this wasn't true. But a recent poll in the Military Times shows that there's been a shift, actually, in the viewpoint of active duty military, showing favorability 41% for Joe Biden, only 37% for Trump, which is down 4 points. Trump had 41% this time last year and won the military vote. Do you think that he can win it again in 2020?
Well, I do. And the president has adamantly denied that he said those things. I was with the president last year at Andrews Air Force Base when he signed the National Defense Authorization Act into law. I was there watching him interact with young Air Force airmen and women. And the connection that he has with the members of the military is just fantastic. I know members of the military, too, are somewhat reticent to engage politically because of their requirement to do so, being a member of the military. But I think members of the military understand clearly what President Trump has done for them, what he's done to make sure we modernize the military, what he's done to stand to defend our men and women that serve, what he's done to advocate for raises for them. I believe firmly that our active duty military and our veterans feel a real connection of the president and feel that he does indeed have their back. And I believe that that is going to be reflected come November the 3rd.
You know, Congressman, your district, as I mentioned, goes pretty far up in Virginia, close to Washington, D.C. You got into a bit of a tit for tat with Washington's Mayor Muriel Bowser. She was allowing a lot of the protests go on that have destroyed or defaced a lot of the monuments here in Washington, D.C. You've made a plea to get those monuments taken care of and to protect them. Explain for me what you're trying to do.
Absolutely. Well, when I heard this, I thought at first, I said, this must be an article in The Onion or Babylon Bee. And then when I looked further into it, I couldn't believe it. I thought, this is a far left radical publicity stunt, or at worst, it is a complete effort to demolish the history of this nation. It makes no sense to say we're going to rename, relocate, or contextualize places like the Washington Monument, the Jefferson Memorial, the statue of Benjamin Franklin, Francis Scott Key. You look at what's fundamental to our nation, and it's hard to understand how somebody should believe or even think that we should remove those statues. And remember, too, or those monuments, remember that this was a small group of people in Washington, a group that looked at this over 5 weeks, only contacted 275 people in Washington, D.C., 2,300 online comments to make a decision that have an impact on 330 million people across the United States, and to completely cancel out this nation's history. It's just mind-boggling. And listen, I understand the mayor removed it, but she hasn't disowned it, because when her original statement said, I look forward to pursuing the recommendations of this commission. It's just mind-boggling and ludicrous to think that you'd even seriously consider something like this.
Yeah, it sounds to me like, you know, so have you gotten any response from her?
No response. We're hopeful to get a response. All she did was to take this down off of her website, but she didn't say that, oh, gosh, mistake, I shouldn't have done this. I should have even indicated that I was interested in pursuing these recommendations.
Yeah.
Before we let you go, real quick, the president announced today that we're drawing out of Iraq most of our troops. What do you make of that?
Well, I've been to Iraq a number of times. I think it's very applicable that we follow the recommendations of General McKenzie. He is looking at the situation on the ground. He's looking at the progress we've made in reducing the size and scope and activities of ISIS, of making sure, too, we have an Iraqi security force that can contend with ISIS and also can push back against any Iranian influence. This has to be based on what's happening on the ground. I believe drawing down to 3,000 troops, based upon what I've heard and seen, is the appropriate act. And I think it's in compliance with what we have said needs to happen, and that is should be conditions-based, on the ground, things we see happening in Iraq.
Congressman, always good to see you. Thanks for being here and giving us your insights.
Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks, Sean.
You bet.
All right. Remember Nick Sandman, the high school student who was in that viral video standing in front of a Native American during the March for Life? Well, an ACLU employee said his acceptance at his college of choice was a stain on the university. We're going to talk to Trish Regan about it.